But first, the question I think we really do have to start asking ourselves a lot. Is Australia ready for war? I mean, do we look ready to fight in just 6 years from now? War with China? Or do we instead look like sitting ducks, totally unprepared? Now, maybe I'm just being alarmist, or maybe I'm alarmed, just like some very senior defence people in the United States, worried that we are about to see a war break out just to our north, and a war that the US would lose. Every week the warnings get more urgent. I've said for some time now, we've got to take seriously what China is saying and doing. And I've said for some time now, listen to Chinese dictator Xi Jinping, who's been ramping up China's aggression, China's hypernationalism, repeatedly warning his army to prepare for war, presumably war with Taiwan and any country that tries to defend it. And watch him picking fights not just with Australia, but with India, soldiers getting killed on their border, and with Vietnam, plus threatening Japan over the Diaoyu Islands that Japan controls and China claims. I mean, just last month, China told its Coast Guard it could fire on ships in waters that it claims, and there's been a lot more Chinese naval ships now sailing around the Diaoyus. But most of all, it's Taiwan that China wants, an island democracy just 130 kilometres from China that China wants to take back. By force, if necessary, it has warned, and possibly take it back very soon. Because again, you must listen to China. Dictator Xi last week, again telling his military, be prepared for complex and difficult situations. The week before, his defence minister said China must comprehensively improve military training and preparedness for battle, because the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is at a critical stage. And China is sending jets into Taiwanese airspace again and again, every week, sometimes every day, like they're practicing bombing runs or testing air defences.
Sunday's incursion involved 12 fighter jets, 2 anti-submarine aircrafts, and a reconnaissance plane. This comes less than 24 hours after the People's Liberation Army Air Force flew 13 combat aircraft, including Chinese bomber planes, capable of carrying nuclear weapons into the same region.
In Australia, most of us probably don't pay any attention to this sort of thing. It seems so far away. But in the US defence establishment, they are really worried, pushing the alarm button. The head of the United States Indo-Pacific Fleet, Admiral Philip Davidson, said last week, China doesn't just want to be the top superpower by 2050, as it has said. It wants Taiwan and could grab that country as soon as 2027, very soon.
Taiwan is clearly one of their ambitions before then, and I think the threat is manifest during this decade, in fact, in the next 6 years.
Just 6 years away. And that Admiral told US politicians there might not be much the US could do to save Taiwan, 12,000 kilometres away, against an attack from its very powerful and aggressive neighbour.
As China continues to increase the size of the People's Liberation Army and advance their own joint capabilities, the military balance in the Indo-Pacific is becoming more unfavorable for the United States and our allies. And with this imbalance, we are accumulating risk that may embolden China to unilaterally change the status quo before our forces may be able to deliver an effective response.
In fact, in recent war games that the US plays to test the preparedness of its military, well, bad news. Against China defending Taiwan, the US loses. David Ochmanek, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence, said last week, whenever we war gamed a Taiwan scenario over the years, our blue team routinely got its ass handed to it. And Air Force Lieutenant General Clinton Hinke, in charge of Air Force strategy, said that if the US military doesn't change course, we're going to lose fast. And if America loses, so does Australia. There are those signs of America switching quickly to dealing with a possible war with China. Last year, its Marines scrapped its Abrams tanks to focus more on fighting an enemy on the other side of the planet. getting more long-range missiles, more drones, unmanned boats, electronic warfare, technology and so on. And the US is tightening defence links with other countries threatened by China, particularly with Australia, as we've been seeing, and India and Japan, the so-called Quad. And the US Secretary of State was in fact in Japan yesterday, where both sides warned against an aggressive China that was moving to dominate our region.
Together, Mr. Prime Minister, our countries will tackle the most urgent challenges facing our people, including COVID-19 and climate change, and we'll stand together in defense of an open and free Indo-Pacific region.
But the question is what we are doing here, given this changing circumstance, this growing threat. Now, I know that Prime Minister Scott Morrison does get this. He's been talking a lot to the US, Japan, India, Vietnam too, which is also threatened by China's rise. And last year, he also said that we too needed more long-range weaponry for an enemy way across the horizon. But look how vulnerable we still are. I mean, we are so dependent on China. It's our biggest trading partner. It takes a quarter of our exports. If there is a war, we are really going to feel it in our pockets, in our jobs. And if war broke out today, if our shipping lanes were cut, we'd probably run out of fuel in less than 3 months. It must also now be clear to everyone how stupid some of our politicians were to treat our $50 billion plan to build new submarines like it was just some job creation scheme. The Turnbull government insisted, hey, these subs better be built in Adelaide, even though it meant building them very slowly. The first one of those 12 subs, in fact, we will not get until 10, 15 years from now. And that's when we're being warned of war in just 6 years. So this is all actually very serious. Now, maybe there will be no war. That's probably more likely than there will be. But if there is one, we are in so much trouble.